Okay, yeah, I think I'm gonna go with this right here. You know, I'm kind of trying to pick up in where it was left off. I mean, I was like doing pretty close to 2 hours, and I didn't realize that something sensitive about like the very second with like uploading it. I mean, I was doing it on the Facebook.com website mobile app with the camera on the website of like Facebook.com, using the website itself for recording the video, but yeah, there was like a complication. It stopped at like 35 minutes. Really, I went on for like close to 2 hours. I know it's somewhere. I'm trying to find it. But anyway, yeah. So like I was like referring to like information involving, you know, obviously the Marmalade Sky and 1972 Trump saying "Make America Great Again," and the thing about the June being the alphanumerics of 50 in America. And the thing with this is that, you know, William Jefferson Clinton had mentioned that he is so appalled. I'm actually trying to place actually what year it was. I'm actually trying to place that. I'm thinking that it may have been, you know, during you know, his presidential administration, but I'm actually trying to place when it was. But anyway, he had made a statement that he is so appalled, okay? And automatically, you know, after I had reading, you know, the book Secret of Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country, and the president of the New York Federal Reserve Bank, President Paul Volcker, his name being Paul, okay, and William Jefferson Clinton making that statement on television. It was like a clip. I believe it was World News. It was almost like a preview of just, you know, the clip of him making that statement that he's so appalled. You know, and automatically having realized something about that book, Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country, I predominantly look for it really based upon really a baptism experience after a baptism June 14th, 1992, on Flag Day, Saturday morning, SAT, VSAT, kind of like a highest possible score the way I see it now. But yeah, so like it's almost like the GMC raising the bar in military grade in a way, but in my mind, it's almost like a Kiefer Sutherland in the movie previously of like Young Guns, and the thing about the peyote out in the desert plains, okay, and years later him in the television series 24 of, you know, him being in the White House in the West Wing predominantly, known as like the West Wing being like the California Angels and the Blue Angels, the West Wing. Yet the Boolean chart and the principles of digital audio, sequencing characterization in sets of 6, is predominantly the thing about special effects and waveform. Even StarGate symbolic representation of the Boolean chart that is in the book, Principles of Digital Audio. Pullman is the last name of the author. I've seen it William and Ken Pullman. I think I may have seen it, but I want to go on with how many, you know, Pullmans I've seen, but really, you know, it's with my impression that William Pullman is predominantly the name, okay? But I've seen it with, I believe it's Ken or Kenneth Pullman. But anyway, the Boolean chart in there, it has symbolic representation, like StarGate, okay? And in my mind, you know, what access is in the way of sequencing characterization and steps 6 and special effects of waveform, as compared to, like, you know, language and programming in languages like sequencing characterization and steps 4 referred to as binary numbers. In audio production, it's sequencing characterization and steps 6 of special effects, and predominantly of like digital signal processing speed, which seemed to be predominantly, you know, the word attenuation, although it is 140 alphanumerically in Pearland, Texas, or, you know, the thing about 140 being like alphanumeric or attenuation, Purple Heart, Holy Miracles, yeah, quite a bit about the alphanumerics of 140 or Highway 59. But that word attenuation, it seemed to be that it's like the word in digital signal processing speed that almost identifies in my mind the quantum side of chemistry as far as processing speed, even of catalyst. and actually color coded in certain types of practical application. Although quantum is identified, that would be almost, there is some practical application principle applied, and it's somewhere in between the different design E of calculus, okay? But calculus does not have the structure that quantum does, and it's the EE, different design E, and I think it's more so of the two structures of Japanese being referred to. But it is the EE likewise in addition anyway. It may be really three a combine, and yet the two separate individual Japanese alphabetical letters that are actual structured according to networking, okay? That there are two Japanese alphabetical letters that are actual structure in quantum. And I noticed that, and it's kind of got to like the idea of quantum being 107 or military or diners club. Or visions, with vision being 88 or plural. The thing about really like Roosevelt New Deal Act is like 88, or the word vision, and with an S it's like 107 visions plural. That's 107, okay, and that's kind of like the thing that's going on in my mind. And once again, I'm going to get this right here, because right here, okay, it's like the Roosevelt New Deal Act, okay. I'm trying to get that reflection kind of out of the way, but this particular person, once again, and in my mind, it seemed to be the connectivity of, like, even in Dallas, of Faces International, and the Lens Authority that was predominantly my direction, looking for more information on the Sony NX100 digital video camcorder that has the dual combine of optical, 24 optical and 24 digital on the zooms, totaling 48 powered magnification with the zoom lens, okay. But it seemed to be Trump saying "Make America Great Again." It seemed to be the Wesley Snipes and Elizabeth Hurley about that, the fake news almost being like in that fake jet in the movie, practicing in preparation for situation as like air marshals of like that would be maybe the thought of maybe potentially being prepared for situational of like of terrorism, okay. Not that it has to be, okay. In any case, so like anyway, my direction went there because the camcorder is a shoulder mounted camcorder, and the thing with this is that it is a news reporter camcorder that mounts on the shoulder, referred to as the ENG, and the EN is like E5 and 14, N14 being like 19, or the letter S being the SC of StarGate or Surgeon General, and Trump saying "Make America Great Again," and all this information is seemed to be leading to the Marmalade Sky of 1972 of the stratosphere. My direction in music video with like the lighting you see right now, excuse me, it's like right now is what you're seeing on like, it looks like a live kaleidoscope mural inside of this tent, okay, which is normally, it's been here for quite some time, okay. But anyway, normally, well, I'm in the room where my drums are really normally at, that you see me on my channel at WadeASVPriddy, PRDDY, YouTube.com, on a 35-piece Pro Vision VSX Strata Red double bass drum set, okay. And once again, I'm like working on getting, the full set of the 35-piece with the Strata Blue, likewise in addition to pasty Color Sound 900 cymbals going blue with everything. In any case, so the particular movie with Wesley Snipes and Elizabeth Hurley and Trump saying "Make America Great Again," it seemed to be the Great Britain and British Columbia thing about the red, white, and blue, and British Columbia being the BC, like Brazoria County, okay. The thing about Brazoria being 90, it seemed to be the thing about really when AT&T was taking over Southwestern Bell, which seemed to be the code blue of Southwestern Bell, even really my baptism, the predominant automatic reference to reach out and touch someone and let your fingers do the walking, okay. And I'm saying this again and just to get it on the same video, but I mean, it seemed to be the thing about a better business bureau bird baptism. Yet it's almost like the Michael Jackson saying it's easy as 1, 2, 3 ABC. or, you know, the BBB and the BBB being Route 66. And, you know, the thing about, you know, really it seemed to be that 6th, 7th, and 8th grade reversed to 8, 7, and 6 apply to the prefix of the White House being 4, 5, and 6 being, you know, the idea of 48 and 84 as referred to. Maybe it's like 84 lumber, or the fake news being 84 that Trump is like referring to, and the 48 being like live, or, you know, sex, or whatever the case may be. And then the 57 and the 75, like the city and the army and the eternal treasury thing about it. And then 66 twice. When 6th, 7th, and 8th grade is reversed, there seemed to be the significance of students holding their hands around the flagpole. And William Jefferson Clinton making that statement that he is so appalled. The thing is that my baptism was on Flag Day. It ultimately gets to all the information of William Jefferson Clinton almost making that statement that is so appalled, and Flag Day being the thought of the triangle of the American flag being folded in a triangle of a military barrel deterrent of the mind's eye, okay? Flag Day, June 14th, 1992, is on a Saturday morning at the Mormon Church, okay, in Friendswood, Texas. And I've seen and heard it spelled, you know, 3 ways: desert, dessert, and deseret at Sunset Boulevard. The thing about it is that falling leaf, I've seen it 1 block and 2 blocks away in the immediate geographical area, and it's not a question of really Region 1, based upon, you know, the border of Canada, the Canadian flag being, you know, the leaf in Friendswood, Texas, okay. And it seemed the, you know, the Region 1 location for, like, the Flag Day baptism, okay. But, you know, William Jefferson Clinton making a statement like that, he is so appalled, automatically it's like, you know, Paul biblically in the King James Version Bible, yet Paul Walker in the book Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country, the New York Federal Reserve Bank president during the Ronald Reagan administration, that Ronald Reagan called Paul Walker, the president of the New York Federal Reserve Bank, to come to Washington, D.C. and get everything in track and in order, and place it with 2 positions as the economic advisor and secretary of Treasury, okay? The thing is that Robert E. Rubin, he, in my mind, is like beyond the method of banking on the side of the endorsement of a current event, not necessarily the history side of the U.S. dollar as banking. You know, I heard reference, you know, as a news anchor, it's almost like when Trump says like fake news, it's almost like, you know, not recognizing the thing about, you know, K television as a ship channel, or liquid equity and maritime law, or anything about a soap opera being used as the presence of family law, yet presented as family law as a presence in everyone's home, but really presidential, executive, and legislative side of a soap opera. Almost like corporate law as ventures and mergers, or represent family law as marriage. Marriage just doesn't seem to be the word in my thinking of corporate, beyond, you know, the thought making a great beyond like business law. In my experience, it's like believing anything about family law really resulting in a StarGate program is probably just really not anything other than like ship channel terminology, and believing anything about family law. It's really not knowing really anything about K television, and like nothing really seriously happening. But it seemed to be the really thing about monetary and domestic aggregates and neighborhoods, potentially of maybe what maybe families may have accepted as an offer, or not at all. You know, class or no class, you know, the situation, it seemed to be really ultimately, you know, the idea of a military deterrent of the mind's eye of a StarGate program. You know, William Jefferson Clinton making a statement that he's so appalled in my mind is automatically the president in the book Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country. When I was actually looking for information, I was reading it based upon like doing a lot of reading in the King James Version Bible, okay, looking for answers. Really, you know, the closest I got based upon, you know, an experience of like a baptism not many days hence, within a 10-day period from June 14th, 1992, which would be, you know, around like June 24th, okay. It's almost like in my mind as a perception, as a telepathic perception, as a telepathic witnessing at the same time. I mean, within walking distance of, you know, that period of 1992, And obviously there was like a situation, and it was kind of like a question in my mind, although a voice like coming from, I mean, my heart for real. But, you know, think about, you know, like a telepathic birth had really seriously taken place. And not many hours later, the same night, I'm laying in bed, okay? And like a voice like came from my heart, and a female voice saying one name, Robert, okay? And I'm totally flipping. And I mean, my heart, my lungs, and my throat like vibrated. And I mean, you know, my first thought, well then, you know, who is Jesus Christ, okay? And I'm kind of like flipping in my mind, you know, like, how did that happen, you know? And I'm kind of like, you know, thinking, irregardless of any case of like, you know, the alphanumeric 78 or Robert or escrow or heart guide, okay? I mean, if all that took place about a sound device, and it's been like issued like a remote sensing and air quality, you know, really, I mean, this is going all the way back, really, since the first time I opened my eyes at birth before a concept of language. Seemingly the thing in my mind, potentially of Mercedes and the three lights above, the first time I opened my eyes as a newborn child. I mean, the very first time, and like a gas mask of anesthesia, you know, placed over my face, and it seemed to be really almost like affirmative action of a pilot, yet division of like the three circular lights. It's almost like the intersecting axis on a wall inside like a detention center, which is actually a national structure on the North American continent. And Aero is I mean, all the newer ones are the same design, about the symmetrical, asymmetrical design of a federal, state, and local authority thing, okay? And it's Aero, in my mind, it's automatically the HTTP colon, and HTTP being 64, and the PTIS on the backside of the US dollar, and the American thing about the alphanumeric 64, or the movie, you know. I really don't like referring to really test at all. And it just don't seem to be the thing to do, okay? Although it is 64, okay? Or the music minus A. I'm really not real thrilled about the minus A, only because, you know, I'm thinking really that, you know, words and lyrics could be like far more productive at an academic level, not necessarily everything that, you know, has, you know, been made available as maybe as constitutional law. And the word would be, you know, probably what many people had heard throughout their life, that is deemed as, you know, acceptable, which is predominantly the case of PG-13 on into an R-rated situation, okay, which is probably, you know, the two that would probably be considered. But the thing is that ultimately that all this information, seemingly, you know, that voice coming from my chest, my heart, okay, that same night, hours later while I was laying in my bed. And, you know, it's kind of like when I had this like experience, it was kind of like a spiritual, mental uplifting, and the perception of like emotions and personalities in the sky all around. I mean, it was like almost like a spiritually, I don't want to say magnetic just because of an MRI or the magnetic resonance. That's really not what I'm referring to as like magnetic resonance of MRI. Although that would be, you know, maybe a thought or maybe a comprehensible, I don't know if the word would be compatible or comparison, really, either one, but it was like a spiritual like uplifting that would give the sense of, you know, like a telepathic birth. It would be not really labor, but an immediate awareness of what seemed to be maybe what would be maybe the thought of maybe a persuasive technique of thinking at the same time. I mean, like a lot of issues in my mind were like going on, I mean, in a split second, with the perception of what would seem to be, you know, like a telepathic birth that was like never even taught or discussed or, I mean, anything, okay? But it seemed to be automatically, there was like a lot more involved in a way of like, you know, a persuasive technique of thinking. Yet, you know, at this one particular baptism in the Mormon Church, not many days hence, you know, the scripture, okay, is that ye must be first be baptized of the water, then not many days hence. And it seemed to be, I mean, that one, not many days hence ye shall be baptized of the Holy Spirit. And I've seen it both the Holy Spirit and the Holy Ghost. But that hence thing is almost like the Hindenburg, okay? And the marmalade sky and the stratosphere of the Hindenburg, yet the hen is about the egg, the productivity, the fertility. Yet the Hindenburg, you know, is the blimp that was like on fire, yet the color of the marmalade sky. Yet you've probably heard it referred to indiscretionally, inadvertently, as the fireside chat, as a presidential reference. The Hindenburg in my mind is like the Goodyear blimp, as NASA, National Aeronautics Space Administration, identifying in my mind something beyond the ship channel or K television of liquid equity of maritime law. Although, it seemed to be the axis of the 1 cycle per second in frequency, like a US dollar with an S with one line in it being like the half above and half below of 1 cycle per second being measured in oscillation. At another 90 degrees, like McDonald's golden arches, at a great level of reputable standards of consensual participation. And it's like that about that frequency that it's been identified in my mind as identifying delta forces. Although the misappropriation application to Mississippi, the delta is referred to as the mouth of the river, yet it's an electronic schematic symbol of the triangle. Not that it's been referred to as a military ability determinant of the mind's eye, although it is a triangle, okay, like on a pyramid on the backside of the US $1 bill. The delta is not normally identified as a military ability determinant on Flag Day, or the US flag folded in a triangle of a military ability determinant. The delta, the mouth of the river, isn't normally even identified in any kind of way that way. Although the mouth is referred to as a delta, in electronics it's a triangle, okay? The delta force that seemed to be the issue that Barack Obama is kind of like referring to as Al-Qaeda really seemed to be the thing about the Pulse Club in Orlando. And it seemed to be the information in the book Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country, of the history of the US dollar below the equator in Latin America, okay? But it seemed to be between the Persian Gulf and Latin America based upon that information. Yet it's like knowing the alphanumerics of like Harris, Egypt, and Israel being 73 in union, and knowing that information, De Beers Diamonds is the thing in that book. Even the Alaska Pipeline is the Keystone Pipeline, and Keystone Light, is like a midnight blue color of like beer, okay? And Coors Light tastes exactly, they taste the same between like Keystone Light and like Coors Light, okay? It's just that Keystone is like the midnight blue, seemingly the thing of like, the Alaskan Pipeline. And it seemed to be the thing about the first number of the prefix of the White House. All the way from Alaska to Houston, it's referred to as the Alaskan Pipeline as the Keystone. The thing it is that, all the way from Alaska, there was that television series Twin Peaks with that actress that did the commercial of like for Infinity. And then later her television series, the V is what it's called, but in my mind it's almost including the thought of Line 6 V series electric guitar combo amp, and Line 6 being the alphanumerics of 92, like a drummer in a Pentagon. And my personal experience based upon availability, Line 6, the Spider, it's referred to as a model, the V series, okay? It has all the connectivity, you could possibly want, and you can hook up, your Bluetooth, your Wi-Fi, and coordination, and all that, in coordination with like mirroring, between, your mobile phone and television, or even that guitar amp. But it seemed to be the thing about, Line 6 and Ibanez, yet it seemed to be the guitar airline in Fort Stockton, Texas, the James Null unit, about, the Tri-County referred to in the Permian Basin area that has the plateau like what Mount Olives would be, yet the alphanumerics of 200 James Null unit being like the Lord Jesus Christ and a plenipotentiary. And it seemed to be the thing about Wyatt Earp and, the oldest governmental computer mainframe called the Whopper. Yet, Friday Night Lights is the thing about the high school football team in the Permian Basin of television programming, all the way from the Fort Stockton, Texas area. It's referred to as the Permian Basin. In my specific, it seemed to be almost like the Y2K of like birth certificates. It's almost like in my mind, like hopscotch of two separate birth certificates of like hopscotch. It's almost like Trump and Vladimir being, the United States and the Soviet Union. It's like, the New Deal Act being 88, okay? What seemed to be, the Pearl Vision drum set, okay? Vision, V-I-S-I-O-N is 88, okay? Like Roosevelt New Deal Act. Yet, what I'm referring to, the first time I opened my eyes at birth before I had a concept of language was like 3 lights, circular lights above me. And only, thinking about my memory of it wasn't really the significance, even, thinking about it. The significance now seemed to be Mercedes-Benz as the 3-point of intersecting axes that would be almost like Audi. Yet the impression in the field, as a field office, as a UFO sighting, that's referred to, and that excuse me, UFOs landing in the field leaves an impression in the field, okay? And it was normally, the thought of maybe 3 circles, sometimes, intersecting and sometimes not, but that was like showing as UFO sightings of them landing in the field. Okay, Jesus said he knew for the foundation of the earth seemed to me to be the field office of the FBI of heat seekers that presents what Orange County would look like as transparent pastel orange of the color was seen to be the amber waves of the grain. And depending upon what year, what season it is during the year of, amber waves of the grain, it seems to give that burnt orange, that transparent pastel orange of like night vision, like the infra red, the infra green, the infra orange. I'm not sure what if it's called infra amber orange or what it's really referred to, but it is, in my mind, the amber waves of the grain for Purple Mountain's Majesties. It seemed to be. Now I'm hearing it as like a vice president network of carbon footprints, absentee voting, mechanics liens, of trading energy in the North American Free Trade Act, and hopefully, the North Atlantic Peace Treaties Organization. For amber waves of grain, for Purple Mountain's Majesty, above the fruited plain, America, America, God shine his grace on thee, and crown the goodwood brotherhood from sea to shining sea. And all that, I never thought of it ever really as a vice president network. There ain't no way I'm going to think of it really any other way. Really now, other than maybe the thought of maybe National Aeronautics and like NASA. Same thing about 35 and Austin Powers and Pearland, Texas, and even the New York Jets. Seemingly even at the World Trade Center. I've had some serious flybys out of the sky, out in the middle of nowhere, like a jet that, removed any all doubt. I was out driving around in between, the thought of like Brazoria County, going towards Matagorda County, towards Brazoria City. In Matagorda, I'm not even sure if I was in Brazoria County or Matagorda County, but I was like out in that area, like Bay City, and just driving around, just to do it, okay. And I was out there, and a jet, is coming down through the clouds, descending, coming right at me. There's like nothing anywhere around, anywhere near, probably, I would say maybe it's a 7-mile radius, maybe, if not maybe 10 mile. Maybe a 20-mile diameter, but it seemed to be, I'm the only thing out in the middle of nowhere, and like this jet is coming through the clouds, and it's like coming pretty quick, considering the size of, a jet anyway, and it was like getting closer and closer. I'm traveling probably around 35 or 40 miles an hour, and just like coming, even closer. My heart starts pounding, and like adrenaline starts like flowing through my body. I'm really getting nervous. It's really coming at me that way. And my heart starts pounding, and I'm kind of like really getting nervous at the same time. But it seemed to be, it's almost like the idea of like 200 feet. At the rate of speed coming through a cloud, and like just watching it descend, right towards me while I'm moving it, 35, 40 mile an hour. 200 feet might seem to be a pretty good distance, but believe me, a jet, that size coming through and like right at me, and 200 feet doesn't seem to be, believe me, it got to be a heart pounding experience. But anyway, it's kind of like approximately anywhere, maybe it may have even been 175 feet. Being the thing about Pearland High School being 175, or a telepathic Air Force, and in God we trust, okay, and it may have been actually 175 feet. Although I'm thinking 200 for the mere sake of like the 200-year celebration of plenipotentiary, the 200-mile protected waters around the United States is 200 miles, okay, and Lord Jesus Christ plenipotentiary and all that information. It may have been actually 175 feet, probably even more specifically a telepathic Air Force. Really, everything that has really happened It seemed to be like even the New York Jets that way. Actually, even ultimately, the World Trade Center. Even my thought of like Chevrolet Avalanche Z66 and Route 66 and a lot of information. And seemingly now that the Route 66 is almost like the Better Business Bird Bed Baptism, as Michael Jackson's thing about, it's easy as 1, 2, 3, ABC, and Route 66, and the thing about, 6, 7, and 8th grade being reversed to 8, 7, and 6 with the prefix the White House, 4, 5, and 6 being, the 48 and 84, and then the 57 and 75, and then 66 twice, which is actually 132, and presidential, yet Route 66 squared would be maybe possibly, the thought, or a combine of 66 twice being 132 is presidential, or even Iowa Colony, in a way, but it seemed to be the thing about, certain aspects of experience of like 1995 going through, a 10-year circuit was like really taking more than 16 years, okay? And predominantly, a lot going on that seemed to be like really 1995, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation actually identifying the Air Force One, the President of the United States, is the one and only time that seemed to be the acronym of the FBI being, the option, as compared to Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Foreign Bureau Interrogation, seemingly of a StarGate program, or the Family Business Intelligence, or even, thought of like Route 66 being that. Thing with this is that Route 66 seemed to be about the rural route and why it irked the executive powers, okay, of sovereign immunities and governmental amnesties. And it seemed to be the rural route thing about Route 66 involving, some idea of distribution as far as like certain factors that seem to be, the idea of like programming and language, yet of rural routes. And predominantly this location here in 1978, in like January of like 1979, it was like Route 1 box, I think it was 1104. I actually have to remember, it's Route 1 box 11, I think 04, because I think it was like 15 likewise. 1104 would be like 15. I think it was really 1104. Knowing what I know now about the prefix and my thing about 1979, and all that information. But anyway, so like William Jefferson Clinton was like making a statement about he is so appalled, okay, and automatically, like the book Secrets of the Temple, how the Federal Reserve runs the country, and Paul Volcker, the president of the New York Federal Reserve Bank, during the Ronald Reagan administration. Yet, it seemed to be really ultimately, 20 years later, after the Marmalade Sky of 1972, and Elton John's song, the EJ being 15, Elton John's initials, EJ being 15, and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, okay, and it seemed to be including the Chevrolet Geo Prism as the Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, yet the Marmalade Sky of the Stratosphere, seemingly the thing of the Pearl Vision drum set, and the Stratocolors. The thing with this is that Pearl Vision is like 88, plural is like 107, like this County Road, or Military, or Quantum, or Diners Club. The thing about Quantum is it's in my mind that it includes the thing about Mercedes-Benz introducing the Smart for 2 car. In my mind, it automatically includes the Scion IQ, which is the highest possible score of an IQ test being 200, and Saturn Sky, in my mind, about a 180-degree identical twin rainbow in Fort Stockton, Texas. Whether man-made or whatever the case may be, it seemed to be that one particular movie with Chevy Chase, Best Defense, about that laser, which is ultimately, in my mind, the presidential reference as a fireside chat. Yet, in my mind, that movie, Best Defense, with Chevy Chase, is almost like the biblical scripture, money is the defense, okay? Chevy Chase's movie, Best Defense, it presents the satellite with the recognizance of the zoom lenses, yet that laser from outer space, from a satellite, in my mind, an international space station. In my mind, it's the identical rainbow in Fort Stockton, Texas, when I was actually there. Yet they present it as the laser. It's almost like the defaulted student loan as tithing, as a religious experience, in a pool of collections as the buoyance of a boycott and embargo, yet like tithing of like baptism terminology, yet the fireside chat of that laser in that movie. I mean, it's at the poolside, shattering the glass at the poolside, but I mean, all that information about that glass shattering in my mind is referring to, you know, the laser. But the thing is that all this information with, you know, what availability means geographically, with me being a drummer, okay, predominantly, and getting the light, I invested, you know, about $15,000 worth of equipment, including like a 10,000 watt power amp and, you know, 32 channel mixing board, are you oh god, yeah, a Behringer Ultra Curve Pro, yeah, master like waveform, customizing waveform, okay, and I had that, and you know, 7, you know, PA speakers, 4 rated at 3,000 each and 2 rated at 1,500 watts each, and you know, really combined with a 10,000 power watt, putting out, you know, 10,000 per channel. I mean, I was cranking it up, you know, and with the ratings of the speakers. So, I mean, it's like right at 20,000 watts, okay. Really cranking it, and plus I had a Yamaha EA10, okay, with special effects, predominantly more so on the acoustic side of the sensitivity of mounted, you know, microphones that goes to a signal processor, special effects for like drums, okay. I was looking for more of a trigger where like a electronic pad could be simple and easily like taped to a drum head. But in any case, so like anyway, so like what I'm getting at, okay, I'm getting back and kind of get back on track here with like William Jefferson Clinton, referring to that he is so appalled because it seemed to be that baptism of June 14th, 1992 at the Mormon Church, not a question of Region 1 because of the street. I've seen it both, a block and 2 blocks away of Sunset Boulevard, yet, you know, the Mormon Church, and I've seen it spelled 3 different ways, pronounced 3 different ways, desert, and Deseret, okay, at Sunset Boulevard. And the thing about it seemed really, obviously, the national security thing about, you know, remote sensing, it obviously been a factor, really, throughout my entire life without really realizing it, I mean, that long ago, okay, of the Marmalade Sky. Although that is the one weekend, if there was like any weekend about, you know, the heartbeat of America or the thought of my main arteries from my heart straight, I mean, to my erection and my pituitary gland, the PT-13 rating has totally turned into something of that, of StarGate Surgeon General as the SC, or even the baptism, baptized in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the S of Spirit, and the G of Ghost, being the SC of StarGate Surgeon General. And it's ultimately even got to how great thou art. How great thou art, then sings my song, my Savior God to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. And it seemed to be really Art House, the name. Potentially the Michael Jackson glove thing. The one white glove, okay, and Make America Great as Pepsi, but he seemed to be so the Dr. Pepper thing of the 23-year anniversary celebration and the 23 ingredients of, you know, a song back in the 70s. And Clyde say, yeah, although Clyde is referred to as a camel in the song, but yet it's like the Clydesdale of like Anheuser-Busch, and Clyde say is referred to a camel in the song, okay, and there he saw Fatima. Fatima, once again, seemed to be the thing about New Jersey, the team. Fatima, it's like the presidential announcement, plenipotentiary announcement of a PA speaker, you know, normally for like concerts and indoor and outdoor performances of like, you know, large audiences, okay. That seemed to be the thing about Fatima, even AT&T International Network Operations. And there he saw Fatima laying on a zebra skin rug, and Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley seemed to be the zebra skin rug of their time with each other. And in my mind, it seemed to be about that song. And there he saw Fatima because it's AT&T taking over Southwestern Bell, which happens to be the thing really in my mind of my baptism of reach out and touch someone and let your fingers do the walking. And let your fingers do the walking in my mind is like, you know, a double bass drummer doing a V-twin figure 8 drumstick twirl as a double bass drummer, like, you know, like I do, okay. And to reach out and touch someone, I mean, it's the one baptism, I mean, that was like really about one particular person. Rick Deese is the thing, is the name, okay. at that one particular baptism, okay? And I was almost smiling, almost laughing inside when he reached out and touched my heart, my chest, and said, "Wade, it lives here." And my very first thought is Southwestern Bell reach out and touch someone. And, in reality, it seemed to be really the idea of, like, the code blue of Southwestern Bell. Even the space shuttle, as black and white, the duration and time of, Clear Lake, Texas, actually identifying themselves through NASA as Space Command Control of NASA as Houston, even before Houston even annexed Clear Lake, Texas, okay? But it's Clear Lake, Texas that's the alphanumeric 137 as Washington, D.C., or Holy Seagull, with 2 L's, the black and white thing of the space shuttle. And really something about that Holy Seagull thing about it, okay? And the black and white thing and the ratio seemingly of Gray's Anatomy and the grayscale. The black and white and the ratio of, like, the space shuttle and Holy Seagull seem to be the ratio of the monochrome of the silver silk screen, the stands of a high school football stadium, even the portable stands of a choir. Seemingly the issue that, like, going through intermediate school on into high school, really seemingly, ultimately, a graduation of 1981, and a specific person I was with on the visitor side, okay, about a sign, okay, and, like, dropping it, okay. But really, really ultimately now it's kind of like, it's really the Keystone thing, something that seemed to be like Alaska's here in Pearland 1981, more than really even realizing that really seemed to be that Alaska was, like, so in Pearland High School. It's kind of like I kind of, like, knew that because of the person I was with, okay. And, like, it was just like a graduation sign, and now it's Miller time. But, in reality, it's kind of like it's on the visitor side. Like, well, no, really, what am I really on the visitor side for? Is the way I'm thinking now, okay. In any case, so, like, ultimately, with the Alaskan pipeline being the Keystone thing, and that sign is kind of like all this information going through my mind, as, like, even the Steve Miller song, big old jet airliner, although, 35, it seemed to be the big old jet airliner, like Steve Miller at the same time, yet it was something that was, like, on the visitor's side, okay? It's not that I'd agreed to, like, really anything of what I'm thinking, and it's like I'm not going to go in that direction, like, really at all right now. I'm trying, to kind of, like, stay focused in direction, okay? But it seemed to be the thing of, like, Alaska, like in Pearland of a 1981 high school graduation, that is ultimately, that sign on the visitor's side, ultimately the Soviet Union, the Kremlin, and the White House, of, like, a StarGate program of, like, some, like, really intense stuff. And memory had been the whole entire issue. Predominantly what started out as an immediate 6 to a 9 month period, then an automatic year, and then, realizing that really a real military barrel determined the mind's eye was, like, really the reality. And then maybe the 2-year thing of only available information of what I knew of the color orange inside, okay. In any case, okay, so based on that information, it seemed that maybe a limit of 2 years, but really at the max it seemed to be now almost potentially 3 years. Even the thing about baptizing in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, really the S of Spirit and the G of Ghost, and the host seemingly William Jefferson Clinton, Al Gore, and Chevy Chase hosting the 1992 presidential inaugural ball. The year 1992, seemingly, the baptism of Region 1, and the G of, like, Ghost being the host, and the G at the B in venue. It seemed to be the Univision thing, representing the alphanumerics of 56, the second and third letter, the 23 of Dr. Pepper, the 23-year anniversary celebration of Dr. Pepper, and the 23 ingredients seem to be, the 56, identifying yet the first number of the prefix of the White House being identified as the midnight blue, similar to the Alaskan pipeline, Keystone being the midnight blue, yet even the Free Sky Rocky Pro bike that I've had, and I purchased it in the year 2025, but it was available in 1995. And even the Lexus LFSA of the summit meeting in Geneva, Switzerland, all that was, like, 1995 being presented as 2015. And it seemed to be really the thing about the Lexus LFSA and, like, the Nexus legal search engine and, like, Westlaw search engine. And at the same time, it seemed to be the LFSA of South America and San Antonio and Santa Ana and Saudi Arabia. And remember the Alamo, it's almost like alimony in a way, remember the Alamo. And it doesn't refer to anything that gets the implication of like a vice president network is international financial management of SAN software or the front lines of the beachfront as a ship channel, or vice president of immigration custom enforcement representing importing and exporting of gross national product as an eccentric triangle of plain horizon in economics. But I mean, I'm not talking about all that stuff now, and it's really seemed to be, I mean, like every single word of it that I'm talking about now, about all that information, and hopefully it seemed to be getting to like what seemed to be even the Kuwait thing involving supplemental security income of non-taxable income. Yet it seemed to be the EBT and almost like a Wesley Snipes statement of the movie Bet on Black, the BET, the EBT, electronics benefit transfer. I mean, Wesley Snipes is in that movie, okay? They're in a fake jet, okay? And they're U.S. Air Marshals, okay? Practicing and preparing for situational, terrorism, okay, in a jet as air marshals, okay. But Elizabeth Hurley, she has that news reporter camcorder on a tripod. It's normally meant to be a shoulder-mounted camcorder, okay. It's an ANG. The EN is like 5 and 14 combined as like 19 or S, and G, it's like the StarGate Surgeon General, and Trump referring to fake news in my mind of that camera that seemed to be now Make America Great Again as Elizabeth Hurley and Great Britain, the red, white, and blue of Great Britain and the United States flag in red, white, and blue. Even the thing about British Columbia being BC and Brazoria County of like Elizabeth Hurley and like Wesley Snipes. I mean, like anyway. And that information and him saying Bet on Black it's almost like Fox 29 News in Philadelphia and Elton John song Philadelphia Freedom at the same time, and EJ of Elton John being 15 and prefix to the White House, and everything really been kind of like going on. I mean, in that way. But what's the making that statement Bet on Black? It's like automatically, Fox 29 News now. It's like Kuwait and the oil as like the Roosevelt New Deal Act, because I mean the International Electronic Engineering and OPEC has information of the New Deal Act, which is 88, like Vision, like my drum set, okay? Pearl Vision. This person right here, in my mind, LASIK, laser corrective eye surgery, okay? I mean, all this information is going on in my mind. I mean, it was the automatic, hey, wow, I mean, at first sight, I mean, for real, okay? And, it's been, really, I mean, okay, this is the year 2026, okay? This one particular person in this picture of a coupon as a current resident, okay? It's been, I mean, since, I think, it's like 1983, I mean, like, really, anyway, probably before, but the thing with this is that with the Social Security Administration's phone number as, network operations in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania as a national issue, seemingly really even potentially the baptism of 1992 as network operations, and including AT&T International Network Operations Center, seemingly the thing of like Brazoria being 90 and AT&T taking over Southwestern Bell may have been really, part of what was experiencing that led to, a 10-year circuit, okay? The perception beginning in 1990, AT&T took over, and I didn't even think that was like even including me that way. I mean, I wasn't even thinking that way. I mean, like at all. Like I'm talking about now, seemingly, really, potentially, has always been that way, and was going to be that way, whether I knew what to say or not. What you're listening to me sound like now, but it seemed to be that AT&T took over Southwestern Bell beginning in 1990. And Brazoria being, I mean, like the 90-degree right angle, and I just like decide that really I'm the 90-degree right angle. Seemingly all that information about the Inuit Comptus and that symbolic representation between the C and the PTIS. That PTIS, is like 64, like an American, or the thing about the movie. But the thing with this is that, HTTP. HTTP :// is really in my mind the ratio beyond the back-to-back design of state, federal, local authorities, which is like of the newest detention centers. The state and federal local authority thing about the structure of the back-to-back, and HTTP : is like computer language and programming of binary numbers. But it seemed to be really sequencing characterization in sets of 6 in audio production, the word attenuation, they seem to have the connectivity of like Robocop and the Transco Tower. And the summit meetings of like, concerts and Pace concerts in Cape Canaveral of, audio production, sequencing characterization sets of 6 and like special waveform and digital signal processing speed with the word attenuation, and even including in chemistry of processing speed of quantum. It doesn't have to be the thought of like limited to chemistry. The practical application of certain particular formulas are the compatibility of quantum in relation in that way. And I'm thinking, if my memory serves me correctly, that robotic automation is included in the practical application of the formulas used in like quantum. Yet calculus is 92 in a pentagon, or even the thought of a drummer. The thing with this is that the difference in E is in calculus, okay? But in quantum, it has the structure, and if my memory serves me correctly, I do believe it is only 2, the actual structures of 2 of the Japanese alphabetical letters that are actually used as structures in the formula of computation. And I think it is 2 individual separate ones. And I mean, it's like all that is like vertical of Japanese readings from top to bottom. And it seemed to be that information of the marmalade sky that weekend representing the 2 of quantum, and the marmalade sky of a Pearl Vision drum set, although it's not marmalade in the sense, it's just the stratosphere of the Pearl Vision, Vision being 88, and the Roosevelt New Deal Act, the New Deal Act being 88, okay? Involving the International Electronic Engineering Organization and OPEC, both being 39, okay? Yet the acronym IEEE without the O is like 24, and that's the thing about from Theodore to Franklin Roosevelt. It's like 6 presidential terms in office being 24 years, and the beginning point of military time is like 2400. My thing about my baptism on Flag Day, June 14, 1992, is now just a latitude of like center point energy of the Eurodollar as a carbon footprint, absentee voting, mechanics lien as trading energy of the North American Free Trade Act. Obviously all that is going on, no one's even said a word about it, but I mean, that's all I'm saying. That's all that's really seemed to be going on. And it seemed to be the transition of that of center point energy and like Texas New Mexico Power. I mean, TXU Energy is like a billing like Reliant for like center point energy, okay? But it's like TXU Energy has like always known. And the only thing about it, I'm saying, hey, that's a smart move. The only thing about TXU Energy in that commercial saying, hey, that's a smart move, is obviously all about the carbon footprint, absentee voting, mechanics liens of trading energy of the North American Free Trade Act. A carbon footprint, I mean, like citizen birthrights up in the air for grabs. And don't tell me it's just the idea of a heat seeker as a masturbating, real estate agent, okay? I mean, but who's trying to kid who? I mean, likewise, in addition, is like that the reality of a pagan idolatry of heat seekers, and Lord Jesus Christ saying He knew you for the foundations of the earth as a heat seeker of a marmalade sky, a transparent Orange County thing about Los Angeles, and telepathic brainwaves, area code 213, and Chevrolet Silverado in Galveston County, the Z71 in Pearland, right here, and NASA is like 35, and Austin Powers, yet Highway 35 here in Pearland, the jet thing about it, and NASA in memory minus the fact though, I mean, it's just so geographically, I mean, Pearland right now, because I'm choosing my words because of a lot of information, really based upon really the experience and not ignoring really the thing about William Jefferson Clinton making that statement. Wasn't in my mind a military ability determinant or the Delta Force identifying an electronic schematic symbol as a triangle or a pyramid, or why one pronoun of the 4 types of pronouns cannot be used as a subject because the biggest mouth of the river is a triangle, yet one side of a pyramid on the backside of the US $1 bill might really be the thought of a structure as Egypt and Harris and Israeli in union of one side of the 4 sides of a pyramid. Why one type of pronoun of the 4 types of pronouns cannot be used as a subject. The wall inside of like, Brazoria County Detention Center, okay, in my mind it's automatically a federal, state, and local authority thing. And HTTP about computer programming and language, of binary numbers, and the back-to-back thing about, the colon really being about the ratio, which is really about the symbolic representation between the C and the PTIS. In my mind, like a geographical miracle, identifying as a telepathic mediation is a biblical scripture, only 3 words is a phrase, spirit of adoption. It's like a telepathic birth thing, only 3 words is a phrase, spirit of adoption being 206 in Brazoria country. It's like in my mind a geographical miracle of the King James Version Bible, alphanumerically identifying really what that symbol in my mind on the backside of the US $1 bill is. Yet Brazoria is like 90, and AT&T International Network Operations Center began in 1990, before I even really knew anything about, alphanumerics. It was, towards the end of 1992 when I really stopped looking for answers in the King James Version Bible and other books, and kind of a guy knocked on the door, okay, and handed me an envelope with like $1 in it. I'm like looking at it, okay, and it totally changed my direction. And the guy, I open up the front door and he hands me an envelope and just walks away. But really after that baptism, I really seriously had like a spiritual uplifting of a mental type of, I don't want to say magnetic for the mere sake of anything, anything other than spiritual, or the thought of mental uplifting is like a spiritual experience, okay? But it would be comparable to the thought of, magnetism as a spiritual uplifting of like a telepathic birth, really, okay? And in my mind, the immediate area at the same time, I'm kind of kind of upset about, the condition of this home, and me being on YouTube and all that stuff like really starting to happen about contaminants and white dust, and pledging allegiance to what seemed to be a Vice President network is pledging allegiance to furniture polish of like dust, and like a whole bunch of dust like all over my floor, the carpet, my furniture, my drums, all my music equipment, in my refrigerator, in the washer, and the dryer, my clothes. Hey, I was like going from room to room trying to avoid it, and me being on supplemental security income, and me thinking, hey, what in the crap is all this about? Like, in my mind, my first thought is like We International, being 181, Houston, Texas, and electronic power, and Pearland, Texas, being the thing about, 140 plus USA, or home, being the 41, combined with, 140 being like, Houston, Texas, electronic power, and We International is like Pearland, Texas, USA, or attenuation, which is the word of electronic power, same with the connectivity of like, U.S. robotics or robotic automation of like Robocop and the Transco Tower, and the attenuation with the UA taken out of it's like the absolute salute. It's normally not even identified. It's like Flag Day, or a pagan idolatry, or some like masturbating real estate agent with a heat seeker within walking distance, okay, or some idea of the pagan idolatry, or the 10 Commandments, or Moses and like Yul Brynner, and Charlton Heston, and that black bird, or some idea of like constitutional laws, a black book, or state statutes annotated, or jurisprudence with the black back of the pastel green. Seemingly the colors in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade of world class identified as province. Ultimately, in my mind, automatically the golf course, okay? As a pastel green, yet the ambience of a 13-band graphic equalizer, and the infrared green of like, night vision, like a Abraham Lincoln Night Vision Shuttle Government StarGate program, and Ford Aerospace and General Motors and Starlink and OnStar being Starlink and Star about the Abraham Lincoln Night Vision Shuttle Government StarGate program, and Ford Aerospace and General Motors with the OnStar, with the global positioning systems and GPS, and like grids involved with like all that information, and geographic information systems as grids, and VSAT of like OnStar. Even the idea of VSAT communication above the thought of like IP addresses and domain names, which really seem to be the issue now of like Kaepernick on the San Francisco 49ers, and the exact opposite of 49 being 94, seemingly of the collusion ultimately Arnold Schwarzenegger in the movie, Collateral Damage, and the thought of like, something Muslim being represented as Barack Obama's reference to Al-Qaeda, but it's kind of like, hey, who are you trying to kid at the same time, okay? I mean, in Katy, Texas, okay, it's like a military base of like remote drone pilots, okay? It's predominantly what I think about, the Army military base out in the Katy, Texas area, about those remote drone pilots, okay? The thing with this is that, all that information, okay, it's just going on and on and on, okay? In my mind, okay, it seemed to be the thing about that Kuwait is like during the JFK administration and Jackie Onassis, okay? And it seemed to be the Vlasic, it's the Lassie, okay? The Vlasic, the V, Lassie C, okay? The C being like almost like the vision. It's in my mind the blue ribbon cutting grand opening, and it seemed to be the blue ribbon grand opening. It seemed to be really, the blue ribbon the go being the grand opening. 56 is 23. It seemed to be, the 56 is 23 of the prefix of the White House, 4, 5, and 6, and the first number 4 being identifies the midnight blue, with the remainder of the second and third number being 23, yet 56, like drum and plaza and light, and not limited to, but it seemed to be, this neighborhood, the way the county roads are set up, is like 107, only one numerical value, separately and individually, than the numerical value of 107A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then the 1 is like, doesn't have a letter on it, it's just 107, but I noticed as I drove around that there was a time that there was like a 107H. And all this information was like going on in my mind, okay? This one particular person, excuse me, and in my mind she's automatically, the connectivity in my mind of Sony NX100 digital video camcorder, which is the one I was looking at, because it seemed to be, it has all the connectivity to be able to connect, to like world news, national news, local news, and live streaming of satellite networking, okay, with the connectivity. It has the connectivity, but obviously it would require more. But that led to Lens Authority in Dallas, okay, looking for like a bunch of information about that Sony NX100 digital video camcorder, a combine of 24 optical and 24 digital, as a combine of like 48 powered magnification, and it seemed to be the one. That's not the fake news, okay? And it seemed to be Trump saying make America great again, and not the fake news. It seemed to be the passenger 57 of the fake jet with Elizabeth Hurley with that digital camcorder. That's a news reporter camcorder. It's supposed to be a shoulder mounted, referred to as an ENG. But it seemed to be really the thing about even the baptism, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, the S of Spirit, and the G of Ghost, being the SC of StarGate, yet it seemed to be the ENG camera, the E and N being like 19, the S and the G of the ENG, a combine of like E and N being 19, and S and the G of that camcorder in the movie with Elizabeth Hurley and Wesley Snipes, passenger 57, and Make America Great Again of like Great Britain, and the red, white, and blue, the flag, as well as like even the British Columbia thing being, Brazoria country as British Columbia of the, that movie, okay? Plus Elizabeth Hurley is, the thing about Great Britain, really anyway, okay? In my mind, she's somewhere in my mind of the voice, and I'm thinking that really it's potentially even, the voice, and the American Idol, but really the voice, it seemed to be, in my mind, it's just like I'm somehow relating Elizabeth Hurley's voice as in a cartoon called The Archies, previously, even before preteens, somewhere in my mind, it's like I almost identify automatically when I hear her voice. It just seemed to be something in that cartoon. But evenly, similarly of architecture, and it seemed to be the Archies really similar, potentially the architecture, platform, embedding, and encryption. And even the Bryan Adams music video, do I have to say the words, okay? It seemed to be the word taxi of that music video in Queensrÿche, because I've heard it at the end of Jet Set Woman taxi, and the beginning of Della Brown, that Queens White being 140 in Pearland, Texas, that one thing about the word taxi seemed to be even a huge dump truck. I mean, probably would have to crawl the wheel just to get to the ladder and get up in there. It's probably about 15 feet high just to get into it and sit in, I mean, a huge dump truck. Then in my mind, it's in my mind, it seemed to be the voice of the female saying taxi in the song Queensryche at the end of, like, Just See the Woman in the beginning of Della Brown. I've heard it both ways, but she says taxi, okay? And it seemed to be even the Brian Adams video of, like, In Simple Turkey. In the transition, it seemed to be like all that information. Like there's just an A custom like symbol, kind of like drummer, okay? But when I was seeing all that involving networking and all the information of like, like a Zilton having information in Simple Turkey, it didn't quite compute as like, you know, anything normal or even really a reality. But I mean, that's some of the information that was being provided. I mean, I know Istanbul is a symbol, okay, for like, you know, percussion and drums, okay, but it seemed to be Istanbul, Turkey, and I'm hearing the words in a whole different way of about standing, as Istanbul, Turkey, okay, and it seemed to be almost White House terminology of Thanksgiving. The gobble gobble ultimately in my mind now it seemed to be the thing about Istanbul, Turkey, okay. And the gobble gobble seemed to be like all the information of like even, you know, amyloidosis and Sarbanes and Oxley financial instruments of SOX compliance and even Jean-Claude Van Damme's movie Bloodsport, seemingly the thing about phlebotomy and separating the red and white blood cell. I mean, you know, like Chicago White Sox and Boston Red Sox of SOX compliance. Yeah, phlebotomy, it's almost like the Jean-Claude Van Damme like Bloodsport. Even amyloidosis, normally the thought of controlling, you know, the isotopes and certain types and make sure that the blood count is the way it should be for like infusions or in need of like a blood transfusion as compared to the infusion, the actual treatment. Normally it's associated with like, you know, treating and combating like cancers. It's like chemotherapy, okay? In any case, so like all that information is going on in my mind because, you know, really after all that, I mean, I was experiencing something of amyloidosis. I mean, I knew what I was experiencing was a blood circulation issue. I mean, I already knew what I was hearing as an admitting diagnosis for a 16-month period. The 15-month, I did not have to call 911, but I mean, it was virtually guaranteed a 5-day and night stay every single time. I mean, I was having to call because of what seemed to be involving, you know, the idea of like getting shocked in midair while I'm like recording. And, you know, what you're seeing on my channel at WadeASVPriddy in some of these videos, I mean, there's like contaminants and dust all over my drums, and I got tired of cleaning it up. It became just as insulting trying to keep it clean as not cleaning it, and all that work, and then it, you know, just happening, you know, in a blink of an eye, like when I go grocery shopping. I mean, or even while I'm asleep, I mean, for real, same with the thing of like national security. National security is a remote sensing, a bunch of crap, okay? I mean, obviously that seemed to be the thing, and the factor of the Marmalade Sky, of me being asleep, you know, 2.5 days that one particular weekend of 1972, and waking up on Sunday at sunset, almost time to go to bed, but it seemed to be the thing about the Marmalade Sky. I'm not sure if it was actually Saturday and Sunday. I was asleep Saturday. Okay, like I went to sleep, okay, and this is like in the zip code here in Pearland of 77581 of like Union Valley, okay, 1136 Union Valley, okay, of the Marmalade Sky, okay. And like I was asleep for 2.5 days. When I woke up, I thought it was the same day, going to be only a couple of days later, but now it seemed to be the real issue of really how great the art, or, you know, the idea of even Michael Jackson's glove being like a hockey goalie glove of the Houston Aeros, and Art Howe, the first baseman of, you know, the Houston Astros, later becoming the manager of the Houston Astros. And the thing about, you know, Michael Jackson's glove, and it seemed to be, I mean, if it was any weekend, you know, I'm realizing that really, I mean, I didn't realize it at all, I mean, for like, I mean, decades. Obviously, you know, my main artery straight from my heart to my, I mean, my erection, okay? I mean, it's not that it doesn't work, it's just that, I mean, like, where's it at, you know? And then the thing about the PT-13 rating was like becoming more and more consciously the thing after certain information after I was on YouTube beginning in 2020, okay? And from 2020 to 2022, 43 years later, from 1979 as a pitcher in Little League on the Padres as a pitcher, I had what I thought was just a pitching injury, only to discover and realize that a laser had been involved before, during, and after. Obviously here in the immediate area, within walking distance, and likewise in addition, on the field itself from a distance. I mean, at the baseball field, I mean, you know, through the parking lot and the house, you know. I mean, for real, I mean, not a funny laser, okay? And I had no idea that a laser had been involved. But I mean, my pitching injury, it was like my arm almost dropped. I mean, I couldn't even pick it up, and I couldn't pitch for the remainder of the season. Okay, but 43 years later, after being on YouTube for 2 years, in 2022, the same pain in my shoulder was happening, not to the extent, but I mean, the only one and only other time that I had that pain in my shoulder was 43 years before. I mean, previously, of like 1979 as a pitcher on the Padres, and now soon to be the Padre is the address. The address is at CBS, and I was just like a pitcher on the Padres, and seemingly the address, okay? It's a CBS, seemingly thing about, you know, Highway 59, and on the north side of Highway 59, where CBS is really, you know, the idea of Allen Parkway just really doesn't seem to be, you know, the reality that I previously had known on Highway 59 north as CBS, you know, the Spirit of Texas thing, okay? In any case, okay, so like, all that information was kind of like, going on in my mind, because, I mean, you know, it's kind of like soaking in. I mean, is that really the Y2K of the pituitary gland? It's a PG-13 rating, as 13 being like 99 as a maneuver, or maneuver, maneuver. Wow. So it seems to be the heartbeat of America, okay? It's like, where are my main arteries, okay? I mean, you know, I've heard of like varicose veins being collapsed with lasers. Yet, I mean, if there was like anything about the StarGate Surgeon General in the neighborhood that normally would be not the thought really supposed to be like in any kind of way, would have had to been that weekend of like 1972 and Trump saying "Make America Great Again." Similar to the Marmalade Sky, would have had to been that one weekend, because I was asleep and I remember the silence. I mean, I so remember everyone's silence. I mean, I noticed it. I mean, it was unreal, noticeable, but it just didn't seem to be anything other than me noticing it, or an immediate concern that maybe I should have been really aware of and wasn't really, truthfully, at all. Now it seems to be what this I'm looking at right here. And I'm kind of like wondering, you know, really, the idea of world class, okay? The thing with this, okay, is that this one particular person with LASIK, laser corrective eye surgery, okay, being the thing about light, laser corrective eye surgery, okay, and being, you know, obviously a drummer making music videos, is almost in my mind, almost the whole entire thought that maybe what availability means geographically in economics, and hopefully even the kaleidoscope eyes of like Elton John's song of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds even Chevrolet Geoprism, and Geoprism spelled with a Z. Geoprism is Geoprison. 109 is 110. Governor is president, or, you know, Los Angeles is president, or the alphanumeric is 247. Ultimately, a Robert E. Rubin quarter, being the bicentennial drummer thing about, you know, 200-year celebration of America, okay? But Robert E. Rubin, I mean, seemed to be the thing about the tribe of Reuben, the tribe of scribes. His name, Robert, is like a name of a female voice that, I, like, after my baptism, okay, actually my heart, lungs, and like chest and like throat vibrating from, I mean, one word in the female voice. Seemingly now it seemed to be like whether or not if air control and, you know, remote sensing had really been the issue my entire life, okay? And that sound coming, you know, hours later after, you know, a spiritual experience after that one particular baptism on Flag Day, June 14th, a Saturday morning. It's almost like the Commodore singing that song. That's why I'm easy, I'm easy like Sunday morning, yeah. It really seemed to be the thing, and I'm going to do the rhythm and rhyme when I really think about it. But it really seemed to be, you know, almost the Seventh-day Adventist thing about the baptism on Saturday. I mean, everyone that's like involved with like Christianity knows more than likely, automatically, that Seventh-day Adventist is a Sabbath on Saturday for Seventh-day Adventist. Yet the baptism of the Mormon Church was a baptism on Saturday morning. Yet the Commodore's 64 seemed to be the ACTP of computer programming and language. And Lionel Richie, you know, it's like probably one of my favorite songs that the Commodore and with Lionel Richie does. That's why I'm easy. I'm easy like Sunday morning. Yeah. Well, anyway, so like it seemed to be, it's the Marmalade Sky. It's easy like Sunday evening at sunset. That's why I'm easy. I'm easy like Flag Day. A baptism on Saturday morning. It seemed to be the Flag Day Saturday morning of the rhythm and rhyme of that song. I mean, I do that when I really get serious about doing the rhythm and rhyme about certain types of songs. And it seemed to be, I mean, even the answer in linguistic alphanumerics that way of the rhythm and rhyme. And I'm sure everyone's heard it, more so probably of political science and degreed majors involving linguistics and alphanumerics, of even StarGate of symbolic representation, including the Boolean chart of principles of digital audio, of sequencing characterization in sets of 6. And it seemed to be the thing about the Roosevelt New Deal Act between Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt being 6 presidential terms in 24 years, the 2400 of military time, seemingly of Ford Aerospace and like General Motors of like Starlink and like OnStar being Starlink and Star, and Abraham Lincoln Night Vision Shuttle Government Stargate program. And it seemed to be the transition now from like center point entry of the Eurodollar based upon only the thought of like having their use as intellectual easement of like where's the human capital in your method of banking. But it seemed to be, you know, the thing about Robert D. Rubin on the endorsement side of a transaction in the bank as a current event. Yet it seemed to be the bank itself of the Federal Reserve Bank's been almost like the executive history as, you know, grandfathered corporate law as retroactive presidential administration as the U.S. dollar, or exchange commission reflecting importing and exporting of gross national product, yet at the same time the New York Stock Exchange and all that information, similar even of Eddie Murphy and the Goonie Goo Goo, Mr. Ice Cream Man, Mr. Ice Cream Man, the Goonie Goo Goo thing that Eddie Murphy, you know, in his comics, in his comedian, you know, like presentations of videos, yet he does the Goonie Goo Goo thing, yet he does, you know, the Trading Places thing of, you know, Mr. Ice Cream Man, Mr. Ice Cream Man, has seemed to be the thing about the U.S. dollar in the movie Trading Places, okay? Yet it's the thing about Southwestern Bell and Bluebell ice cream, and it seemed to be the thing about the code blue of multiple U.S. patents being used. And I'm thinking it's including, not limited to, what solid state in my mind seemed to be of like using many U.S. patented products to actually originate and formulate a unique type of patent. Not necessarily the thought of a prototype, but it is a prototype, and it's a combine using already patented products. It seemed to be really the issue, really like kind of like right here, right now, what I'm talking about. And it seemed to be, you know, the idea that solid state in my mind is kind of like Eddie Murphy referring to the Goonie Goo Goo. It's almost like Alice the Goon and Popeye the Sailor. I love Popeye. Yeah, but, you know, it seemed to be almost like, you know, the thing about, you know, something really not cool at the same time. But it seemed to be that information of like Eddie Murphy referring to the Ice Cream Man as Southwestern Bell. And the United States Supreme Court Southwest Court Reporter, ultimately a 247 degree of Southwest Freeway, Highway 59 on southwest side of town, seemingly at an 8 o'clock position. It's like 247 degrees, either 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. Seemingly the thing about the United States Southwest Supreme Court Reporter. And, you know, when I was like reading all that information, I like thoroughly was like, you know, looking at every case I felt like reading about de facto. I'd read so many cases of like de facto, it's just that General Motors was becoming more and more, I mean, more and more, you know, case presence is you know, in the United States Supreme Court Southwest Court Reporter, I mean, became more and more of like General Motors, repeatedly General Motors and others, but it seemed to me that General Motors covered, I mean, every possible situation of intellectual property involving de facto. So I like really just stayed on General Motors because of the transportation being 200 and Lord Jesus Christ and a plenipotentiary. Ultimately, even the Wyatt Earp thing of Earp bringing the exclusionary rule provision, seemingly the thing of executive powers sovereign immunities and governmental amnesties. Same of the monochrome, the history of a television screen, the silk screen, and even the colors of a high school football stand. Samely now of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade during the bicentennial celebration. Of students holding their hand around a flagpole only 2 of the 3 years. Same with the significance of the prefix of the White House of that fact, holding their hands around a flagpole and praying 2 of the 3 years being the 23, the prefix of the White House, the 56, and the 1 year that they didn't do it. While I was like in intermediate school, seemed to be why the first time the prefix of the White House is a midnight blue. Is the students holding their hands has that kind of significance in my mind. Yet a cone as a pylon is like the 7-point crown of the Statue of Liberty, or telepathic teepee being a teepee being 36 in Chase, or telepathic being 99 like Chevy Chase, or the number 13 spelled out, and the 13 stars being 13 telepathic stars. Okay, and Chevy Chase on the map in like Washington D.C. all about the Department of Education. Chevy Chase Boulevard. Okay, the thing with this is that all that information, I mean that's a lot of information. It's all available. Okay, but the thing with this is that William Jefferson Clinton making that statement that he is so appalled, and it seemed to be including the triangle, the flag being folded into a triangle. And it's like really sinking in that really that part of a circuit really happened while I was asleep. Okay. And the real deal about, the mind's eye. Actually, I'd mentioned Chris Tomlin's music video being used. It's not the only one or the only situation, but seemingly even of the Europe's most wealthiest museum involving a Microsoft presentation as the black and white, as like NASA, as a space shuttle, as a holy seagull of Europe's most wealthiest museum, seemingly the thing about a museum for dead people. How true that is, okay? I only remember the thing about the hallway, okay? But it seemed to be, the thought of like, even placing a Ziploc bag as a Ziploc airtight and thrown into a swimming pool as a fireside chat, okay, as a tithing of a defaulted student loan combined with a Pell Grant, as falsifying the idea as a tithing of like buoyance of like terminology of a baptism of a defaulted student loan. I mean, it was even placed in a bag and thrown in a pool. I mean, that's really not funny, okay? But the thing with this is that it seems that remembering anything about that is like almost like beyond like not cool, okay? But remembering it and realizing, I mean, I don't have to be post-traumatic. I mean, about not one thing, okay? I'm not trying to be, okay? But William Jefferson Clinton making that statement, he is so appalled is seemingly including the thought of the flag being folded into a triangle, which is the misappropriation allocation of the Mississippi, the biggest mouth, okay? Being the idea of an electronic schematic symbol as a triangle or a pyramid of the backside of the U.S. $1 bill in Harris in Egypt and Israeli and Union, okay? The thing with this is that I'm not trying to be self-destructive just because I have something to say about the memory, and it seemed to be the biggest thing about memory minus facto being 35 and it being, Highway 35 in Pearland and Austin Powers, Blue Bonnet Imperial Eagle of Austin, not limited to, seemed to be the connectivity of Orion Performance Monitoring, even Data Foundry, and Imperial Drive seemed to be the thing about Imperial Drive, the ID being Imperial Drive, the COVID ID 19, the COVID ID being ID is Imperial Drive, seemingly of networking, seemingly connectivity of like Sugarland, Texas, Imperial Sugar, and the Blue Bonnet Imperial Eagle, and Mercedes-Benz introducing the Smart for 2 car at Highway 6 and 59. And Mercedes-Benz, in my mind, been the first site that I saw at birth before I had a concept of language of 3 circular lights above, but it seemed to be the thing about it being on the wall of Lockheed Martin. The 2 open arrows, the 2 arrows, the 4 lines and 3 intersecting axes, having an analytical reading of like a 232, okay, reading the points intersecting axes as a 232, like an atonement of Green Acres, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, really seemed to be the thing of Lockheed Martin as an atonement, like Michael Jackson does with Billie Jean's not my lover, It just seemed to be the thing about, it's just Kenny Burrow claiming Billy White Shoes Johnson is the one, but PC Color Sound 900 symbol is the one. Hoo 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 hee hoo. Yeah, for 40 days and 40 nights, I had to climb above Noah's Ark onto a tree. Yeah, sure, okay. But it seemed to be, something about, Michael Jackson doing his thing on a sidewalk with them lighting up like, the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and that being on a plateau. Likewise, in addition, thing about even, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, communicating with like sound and colors. Seemed to the thing of like even Michael Jackson as an atonement. And it kind of seemed to be the thing about Lockheed Martin, the 2 arrows, 4 lines, and 3 intersecting axes having a 2-3-2 count. And in my mind, it's like automatically Green Acres, the thing about a new development. Maybe even the thought of entitlement. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But it seemed to be the 5 eccentric triangles on the wall and the 3 circles at a head east point of view. And my first thing when I opened my eyes when I was like a newborn child was like 3 lights above me and like a gas mask of anesthesia was placed on my face. I mean, the very first time I opened my eyes, as far as I can remember, that was my very first time I opened my eyes, okay? And it seemed to be the 3 lights being the 3 circles on the wall as a UFO sighting. As the biblical scriptures, he said he knew before the foundations of the earth. As a field office, you had an impression of a UFO sighting. You have Mercedes-Benz with an intersecting axis on the wall, being a 3-point, but really there's only 2. But there's 3 circles, okay? On the wall, it's like it has intersecting axis that points southeast direction based upon the whole entire wall at a head east point of view. And the 5 eccentric triangles overlapping each other is really based on the thought, not really the Atlantic side as the Cuban crisis or the Cuban missile crisis, but more so my friend Flicka the dolphin and the eccentric triangle identified as a plane horizon of gross national product, more so in my mind. But on the wall it's showing its 5 eccentric triangles as like the 5th dimension. The DC of Dimensional Claws of Washington DC, as that song 5th Dimension, saying up in the air my beautiful balloon and Orion performance monitoring. Seemingly in my mind, all the alignments dependent upon each other just seem to be the automatic natural thing on the wall, just using an alignment originating from a shelf on the exact opposite side of the wall with 2 triangles up under it. Being automatically the 6-point star, an Israeli deal about the 6-point star in the triangle of like 2 delta forces, ultimately even the 2 Japanese letters in quantum identifying, the EE on the backside of the US $1 bill between the C and the PTIS, and the quadrants of, globalization of like the world map as like the Oval Office, and even in anatomy and relation, of like, production and compatibility is like what really, is presented as, consensual participation, okay? The thing with this is that all this information is going on in my mind. It's already going on an hour and 28 minutes and 15 seconds. Wow. So like, I'm wanting to take a break and get this going, because really, I could probably talk, probably all day and night until I probably just, couldn't stay awake anymore. But in any case, yeah, so like, I'm kind of keeping all this in my mind because there seemed to be the significance really ultimately of Kuwait, of, the KU, the pronunciation of Cuba being the Q, or the 17, or the in and out, or the KU bands, and in my mind it's automatically the VSAT, the 2 of VSAT, and as far as I know of, there's only 2 KU bands in VSAT communications, being the pronunciation of the W is really the double V. Everyone knows it. Since day one in elementary school, why are you pronouncing it W when it's really a double V? I'm sure every elementary student is thinking that thought, the very first time, they're comprehending, language, like, that's really a double V. Why are you saying it's a double U? And finally now, it seemed to be like, now what I'm talking about, the 2 KU bands of VSAT communication, seemingly not requiring IP address and domain name, potentially now, seemingly of supplemental security income, or the EPT is electronic benefits transfer, and all the information of the Department of Weights and Measurements at the gas pump is potentially something night vision shadow government, as like maybe Northrop Grumman or maybe even including like Lockheed Martin, but it seemed to be the NFC card and like a debit card at the pump, but it's presenting what seemed to be something happening at the pump, almost the Kuwait thing of like autonomous systems based upon, you know, being at the pump as transportation, and, you know, like what's going on at the gas pump, and, you know, even my Free Sky Rocket Pro with the NFC card being Alpha America 23 or Dr. Pepper, or the, even, you know, my thought of like maybe even George W. Bush in a way of like 23 being like GMC, racing a bar, or military grade, or the thought of, you know, the CEO being a corporate executive officer in 23, or Dr. Pepper being the thing about, you know, color code. Yeah, you know, the thing about Dr. Pepper's 23-year anniversary celebration and the 23 ingredients. And in my mind, it's automatically that song, and Clyde say, nya, nya, about the centerline oscillation, one cycle being per second being measured. And Clyde say, nya, nya, and that's that little waveform looking cycle over the letter N in the name Pena, okay? And there he saw Fatima. It seemed to be automatically New Jersey. It's the Fatima laying the zebra skin rub seemed to be Lisa Marie. The LNM of Lockheed Martin in legal media is the last four of the Social Security Administration's phone number, 1-800-772-12 and 13, been LNM, or Lisa Marie Presley, first and middle, you know, initials, LNM, Lisa Marie, with Michael Jackson, his initials being MJ and 23, like, you know, Dr. Pepper, MJ being like, you know, 23, or Sigma Alpha Delta Kappa Phi in that way. And it seemed to be the zebra skin rug of that song. There he saw Fatima laying on a zebra skin rug, and the thing about rug being 46, okay, and a combine of the 23 anniversary celebration and the 23 ingredients seemed to be the thing about 46 that way. But anyway, you know, that's the way I kind of like think about everything, because of the way everything happened, and realize that memory had been such a phenomenally huge thing that I didn't even realize was really the issue. And really, after 25 going on 30 years, and my memory being brought back when I was like putting myself on YouTube, and it seemed to be that when I mentioned one certain factor, I mean, all the music videos of a bunch of white and gold of the Kremlin and the White House, and the white and gold and blue, I mean, of like phenomenal wealth and like phenomenal architecture and a whole bunch of different locations. Seemingly, I mean, I was kind of like really wondering, am I even on this planet? Some of the locations, I mean, like up in the clouds. I mean, for real. So like, anyway, so like that had been like, you know, some of the hardest part about remembering anything, and I was almost in, you know, I don't want to say state of shock, but I mean, I don't want to say post-traumatic either, because of the experience. I mean, it seemed like everyone on the entire planet knew from the very beginning that all what I'm talking about was going to happen, but maybe didn't know really what to anticipate. But it's kind of like, seemingly now, it seemed to be like the entire world has waited to hear what I have to say. It's like a phenomenally huge secret. It seems to be like everyone on the entire planet knows. Okay, but anyways, I mean, you know, I don't need to feel post-traumatic really about anything, and I'm not trying to feel that way. I mean, I am a musician, okay? I am a drummer. Although realizing, you know, certain factors about participation in the StarGate program, I mean, it's just, you know, in any case, so like, anyway, so like, that's the way I think about it, and, you know, it's, really kind of like that way anyway. So like, anyway, I'm going to take a break, okay? It's like going on an hour and 33 minutes and 35 seconds, so anyway, yeah, so I want to keep it, and I'm going to like leave it at that for like right now and get this uploaded. I was going to do it on Facebook, but it's presenting complications that is already not funny, okay? I don't need all the complications. I'm really getting like beyond like, you know, avoiding saying, hey, I don't really like it like that, okay? There's no need for complications, and I kind of like wish all that like complications and interruptions and all that other stuff would just make it just like a normal day and not any kind of complications or interference in that way. But anyway, yeah, so like, anyway, I'm gonna take a break, okay? So like, there it is, okay?